Therapod Predation and Tyrannosaurus rex revisited. Of all the monsters a young boy's imagination is peopled with, the Tyrannosaurus rex is probably the most fascinating. As a boy, I remember being impressed beyond words by the wonderful painting of a T-Rex in life on the wall behind the displays in the Hall of Dinosaurs at the Carnegie Museum in the Oakland district of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This big, black, demonic Rex was invulnerable, voracious, immortal, and small matter its several taxonomical inaccuracies, for it was there to impress and excite, and those it did very well. Which begs the question, what was Tyrannosaurus Rex really like? In the 50 years since I first saw that painting, I have done a lot of reading and thinking and reading, and many intrepid paleontologists have gone forth into the fastness of the Mongolian and Wyoming Badlands in search of a complete enough specimen or specimens from which to draw certainties, where before there were suppositions and innuendos. Cold-blooded, slow-moving, stupid beyond measure, these were the myths surrounding the existence of the top predator in the Cretaceous utopia from the earliest days of dinosaur hunting. Size, shape, and posture perfect. Paintings of this amazing monster have been executed since its discovery, and they have changed as the ideas about dinosaurs changed in the musty halls of academia. First he stood upright, like Godzilla, and we all just wondered what it was he could feed on from way up there. Then he leaned over till he could actually reach potential prey items, a great step forward for tyrannosaurs and artists everywhere. But there was still something not quite right about his stance. After all, the sharp drop in girth between the gastralia-protected abdomen and the relatively flat hips themselves really suggest the reptilian, don't it? So it looks more like Rex was supposed to crawl on the ground like a croc than it was to walk about on its hind legs. Except for those tiny little, whatever they are, passing for forearms. Let's call them canards, shall we? And the current view, at least the artist's conceptions of it, seem completely off balance, unless the beast is always running or has a tail representing 50% of its total body mass. Which I believe it doesn't. Here he comes. Here comes Speed Racer. This seems a fair possibility for the posture of a running Rex, body almost parallel to the ground, weight well distributed, whether there's an airborne phase to its run or not. Considering the recent understanding of the architectural perfection of Rex's skeleton, the air pockets, interlocking lightning techniques, the odd lever arm balances, it seems reasonable to assume that the animal weighed much less than has so far been estimated. Not a blocky walker like modern elephants, Rex was a light, flexible, agile predator. The pose I have drawn here is reminiscent of that taken by the ostrich in its run, and you can see how Rex was well constructed to take advantage of it. A point that seems worth making here is that, without specifics, the world's largest modern reptiles, marine crocodiles, are capable of a run fast enough to catch slow-reacting prey, though their bodies seem designed for almost any other sort of activity than that. As to speed and predation for a carnivore as big as a Tyrannosaurus rex. First off, some apex predators, the ones on the top of the food chain, are fast and others are slow. Some use stealth and even outright misdirection the better to obtain prey, while others just charge in with guns blazing, to coin a phrase. Lately, folks have been trying to return us to the Stone Age vis-a-vis T-Rex by saying it would not be an active predator because it would be afraid to pursue prey, as in, "Help, I've fallen and can't get up." How many times I've heard ostriches say that. But they don't. Bipeds have mechanisms for standing and sitting and even lying down, whether scientists recognize them or not. And as for fear and wisdom when pursuing potential prey, every macro-predator I can think of leads with its face. And if that's not stupid, then I'm going back to Rutgers. By token of the above aphorism, that Rex would fear to fall and so would not pursue prey actively, I can only say that lions and tigers and bears would, by the same logic, be afraid to attack any prey at all for fear that they might get their jaws broken. After all, A lioness with a broken jaw is dead man walking. Now that the bones of this amazing monster have been magnetic resonance imaged, it has been shown that their strength and lightness are both greater than any had expected. Indeed, it is not outside the possibilities of structural engineering to postulate an adult male T-Rex being in the range of 40 feet long and weighing in at around 4 U.S. tons. Could such a monster outrun a World War II Jeep cranking it in full reverse? Surely, without a doubt. Could it outrun a Humvee going flat out on the straightaway? Unlikely. After all, it might fall and hurt itself. Guts, glory, and gastralia. Whether you believe Tyrannosaurus rex was 4 tons, 6 tons, 7 tons, or even heavier, a lot of that mass must have been composed of viscera, notably the stomach and gut, kidneys and liver, heart and lungs, and who knows what other evolutionary dead ends of biological errantry might lie within the body of this ancient monster. To keep that enormity of precious organ resources intact and internal, many dinosaurs, T-Rex included, had belly ribs called gastralia. These created a bowl of sorts within which the thoracic and abdominal viscera lay, providing the dinosaurian equivalent of the slat frames of an old-style bunk bed, and, perhaps, making it harder for those nasty ceratopsian horns, i.e. Triceratops, to get at the soft bits every Rex wants to keep sacrosanct. With substantial ribs and gastralia, protecting its organs, and plenty of thick, flexible hide of a design quite up to the task of warding the rest of the beast from the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, it seems safe to assume that Rex was a difficult animal to kill, and that no other dinosaur in its right mind would try to stop it from doing whatever it pleased. Hunting, bullying, or scavenging. The next question isn't how fast could T-Rex run, but more precisely, how fast could T-Rex's prey animals run? If they were slow-mos, then Rex wouldn't need to move around faster than a guy on a freshly charged hover-round. If, on the other hand, they were quick, alert, fast-running, fast-reacting, then their predators would also have to possess those qualities in some abundance. Some kinesthesiologists posit that elephants do not run, for there is no airborne phrase in their locomotion. But is this the real question? If an elephant rushed toward potential prey animal, supposing he'd want to try a little something new on his plate, whether airborne or not, he'd be able to move at over 20 miles per hour, and that's fast enough to catch most trainers. There's video out there to prove it. A corollary to this point is the observation, which I did not originate, more's the pity, that, like with great white sharks, who feed off different levels of the food chain at different levels of development, it might be young, light, agile Rexes that ran down prey like lions do today, while older ones, heavier, slower, stodgier adults, bullied smaller predators away from their kills, just like bears and big male lions can do today. Opportunism. The ability of an apex predator to feed on a wide scale of potential foodstuffs seems indicated here in any case. Evolution or radiation? Evolution is specious nonsense, at least the way it's misrepresented in popular literature. Species do not select for superior qualities. That much can be seen in life, where females consistently prefer the male with the best rap, the hottest breakdance moves, and the slickest threads. And no species knows what's good for it. Otherwise, every whale in the world would flee when a human ship came into view. But they don't. And most of us would grant the whales more smarts than even the sharpest dinosaurian scholars. A simple corollary is that a male lion, able to kill another male, may not be the best possible mate for any number of other reasons, including short lifespan, predisposition to colic, and horrible flatulence, any of which can seriously affect the mating urge on both sides. That said, there seems to have been a marked radial expansion in the number of closely associated species at certain times in the geological clock. I attribute this to the intense levels of nuclear radiation and contamination that a little math will show you that Earth suffered under until quite recently, perhaps as recently as 2 million years ago. A lot of different, closely related species might be nothing but a systematic, symptomatic mutation or mutations caused by radiation poisoning. In such a case, T-Rex might not be a separate species at all, but a fairly common case of radiological mutation, or a damaged recessive gene attendant to a more ordinary species of raptorial dinosaur. So, will the real Rex please stand up? A few years back, there was a good bit of discussion as to whether Mongolian Asian tarbosaurs, other similar large theropods, were cladistically closer to Tyrannosaurus than had been previously supposed. At one point, several doctors were ready to class the two species next to each other, but results from intensive studies run on the two genotypes have led many scientists to suspect their similarities are more a case of parallel evolution than a close common ancestor proximate in time to the two. The biggest difference between the two species seemed to be the skull. Rex's skull was wide, deep, and robust after the eye sockets, which were wide set and better angled for binocular vision than those of any other large theropod. Tarbosaurus's skull, while almost as long, was narrower in the rostrum, the snout, and much less broad behind the eyes, suggesting a smaller brain pan, among other things. In other words, you might say the Tarbosaurus was a handsomer and therefore probably sexier beast, but T-Rex had a much nicer personality. Ecology, environment, and grand design. There is no good reason to suppose that Tyrannosaurus was a land animal and nothing else. For all we know, it might have been a swimmer. Eyes and nostrils far up on that big head, reminiscent of amphibian reptiles and archosaurs, and just imagine the speed it could get using that powerful tail for propulsion. On the other hand, it was likely not an efficient flyer, and good thing too, because it could easily extinctify any small creature walking underneath the morning after a big meal. That said, its remains are found associated with wetlands, so having webbed feet might actually be a positive physical trait after all, not to mention the ability to swim as mentioned above. Since there has been some serious attention paid of late to the hitherto heretical notion that Earth's atmosphere might have been different back in the Mesozoic era, that methane or oxygen might have been more substantial components than are today, by whatever mechanism, and carbon dioxide too, perhaps, I would like to comment on it in relation to the existence of dinosaurs. In such a greenhouse atmosphere, there would be heavy fogs and mists and dense veils of photochemical smog. Maybe the brutes living on the earth then were half blinded by mephitis clouds and pea-soup fogs, and all a top predator had to do was follow his nose through it all, barring sudden lava fields and the odd bottomless pit. Best behavior. Take a moment with me and leave the sound basis of scientific speculation for the unsure ground of biological whimsy. To make a point, consider that the openings in the skulls of Rex and other theropods, meat-eating bipedal and bird-like, which lie between the eye socket and the nostril, might be there for more reasons than their use as pneumatic vacuoles for jaw muscle attachments, such as is attributed to them today. In my mind, this is possibly also the room needed for the location of an infrared sensitive eye, like that of a rattlesnake, an organ capable of detecting the heat put out by objects and creatures. Should this prove to be the case, and I am not proving, mind you, just supposing, Tyrannosaurus Rex might not have needed to run his prey down at all. He or she could track sleeping prey in the dark of the night by means of that wonderful infrared eye, or pit as it's known in herpetology, and then bend down and take a bite of anything, almost at leisure. In the dark of a new moon, every Tyrannosaurus Rex would be out and hunting. When did these actors leave the stage? While the KT, the Cretaceous Tertiary, boundary, about 66 million years back, hypothesis is a very shrewd one. There is no absolute proof that dinosaurs died off at the end of the Cretaceous. Suffice it to say that, according to current, which means subject to change, mind you, methods of dating rock and mineral deposits based on other mineral beds associated with them in situ, no newer finds of dinosaurs are made, or perhaps none are reported, emphasis mine, which leads science to believe that they did not persist long into the age of mammals. Since human mythologies are rich with dinosaurs and their impressions, specifically Stymphalian birds, the killing of which was one of the labors of Heracles, the many and persistent legends of dragons, archetypes of which meeting every physical description. The elusive Mbebe Mokele of Central Africa, and the intriguing images from the dreamtime of Australian autochthonic peoples painted on rocks in the holy and gathering places, it seems safe to assume that dinosaurs, or their remains, were well known to the ancients. There are plenty of other avian and or reptilian monsters in the mythic lexicon, of course, and their likenesses are often found in period art. More recent finds, in particular those of hitherto unsuspected biodiversity of plains-dwelling forest wrasses, also known as terror birds, dating to the much more recent, i.e. within 1 million years of the rise of man, eras might point that finger of monsters of modern times, elsewhere of course, but I remain hopeful. The archetypal terror bird, Brontornis, isn't even a terror bird as it turns out. So there's a lot of research and discovery left to new generations of paleontologists and of Mongolian guides. William Bernard Cox. Bibliography. Whitmer and Ridgely, 2007-2008, various fascinating papers on endocasty, sinusoidal anatomy, and nasal adaptations in dinosaurs, archosaurs, and modern animals, and Whitmer Lab publications in general. Also, Tyrannosaurus, Raising, Caring for, and Training Them for Fun and Profit, Bradbury, Raymond, 1950. Also, Turok, Son of Stone, May-June issue 1960, Gold Key Comics. And How I Destroyed Godzilla with an Oxygen Bomb, Burr, Raymond, care of Tojo Films, 1961. Evidence of an Ancient Underground Breeder Reactor, Advanced College Physics, 1991. Influence of cannabinoid alkaloids on cognition and rationalization, any minute now, May 10th, 2010. Thank you for watching.